had a bad non-conference season, and then they all of a sudden started kicking butt in the Big Ten, but they still were not a good road team. Okay, seeing what they did in the tournament though against Nova and Old Dominion shows differently. I mean, they're shooting lights out against Nova. Nova didn't even know what hit them. Okay, it wasn't even Nova's fault. I almost think any team would have lost that game. Tennessee was one of my play-on teams. They were ranking third in offensive efficiency at a huge 49.6%. Shooting on the road, outscoring opponents by 5.8. The problem is that the Vols have hot and cold spells, just like we saw last game. They falter against the good three-point shooting teams. They're great at everything offensively, but they don't rebound the ball. They only rank 207th in defending the three. Purdue relies on the three. They rank 207th in defending it. I'm worried about that. So with Purdue's height, three-point shooting, and ability to rebound, there's some mismatches here. And that's why I'm surprised more sharp money's on Tennessee here. I don't know. I looked deep into this one, trying to wonder that a little bit. So I think Purdue wins this game. I'm not going to bet it. It's a lean for me. I mean, look at the spread, but that's my final thought on it. I think if there's any way to go, it would only be Purdue. Do you have any final thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're on different sides of this one, and that's kind of fun. That's kind of fun to debate. My take, I guess, is it's going to come down to which team can play more physical. I'm a little bit skeptical of Tennessee's ability to limit those offensive rebounds for Purdue, like you mentioned. At the same time, if you look at KenPom, offensive effective field goal percentage, Tennessee ranks 21st in the country, and Purdue 78th. I consider that to be significant. I think that might make the difference here. For some reason, when I look at some of the line value and other matchups and other rankings throughout the season, I feel like Tennessee -1 here, even on a neutral, just feels like value. It just stood out at me, given some of the games in which Purdue has dropped and been inconsistent and so heavily reliant on one player. We might be on different sides on this one, but I'm anxious to see how it turns out.
Well, we'll see if Ryan Klein can pick up the slack for Carson Edwards if Edwards is missing. So that's going to be super interesting. I can't wait to watch this game, man. This is a popcorn game. Screw it.
Sure.
All right, let's get into another tough game. Texas Tech versus Michigan. Michigan laying 2 points, over-unders 126. Well, I'll start with this one. You know what everyone's thinking here, the under, right? Because you got Texas Tech versus Michigan. But these two teams rank number 1 and 2 on defensive efficiency. The problem with the under is that both of these teams, even though they play very slow, they're able to put up some serious points if need be. Michigan has a top 20 offense of KenPom, and Texas Tech hasn't scored under 70 points since February 9th at Oklahoma. Since February 9th, they scored over 70 every single game. Michigan shoots 44.6% on the road, outscores their opponents by 9 points on the road, while Texas Tech shoots about 44% on the road, outscoring their opponents by about 5. Michigan, they had the harder schedule, right? And they have the proven coach. Yeah, I love John Beilein. I mean, he's just look what he did last year. Look what he does with nothing. But I think that you can't sleep on Chris Beard. It feels like his year, kind of. The Red Raiders, they've been beating some very good teams this year, and their defense against Buffalo, I don't know if you watched that game. I did. That it looked unstoppable. Buffalo couldn't get any looks. It was swarming. It was like you're watching Virginia. Their defense looked better than Michigan to me. So both these teams play very well on neutral floors too. They did. Obviously Michigan lost against Michigan State, but Texas Tech had that one loser against West Virginia. But these two wins woke these teams up. My raw numbers have Michigan 64.5 to Texas Tech 64, literally a half point. And so I think this game's just going to go down to who wants it more. Being Michigan was a Final Four team last year, I have to think that Tech might be more motivated. I'm not convinced on a side or a total. I lean Texas Tech and lean the over, very slight lean to the over. But I'll tell you this, man. This is another game that I'm probably going to sit back and eat some popcorn. I do have Texas Tech advancing in my bracket. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have Texas Tech advancing for sure. In fact, I have Florida State advancing, and then that being the big matchup in the next round. But I have this power line as a dead even matchup. I struggle when I look at some of the offensive and defensive efficiencies where you can look at raw numbers and say, here's where I know the edge is. Both of these teams come in extremely hot from an ATS standpoint, too. Each of them are 4-1 the last 5. 8-2 for Texas Tech last 10, 7-3 Michigan last 10. I mean, you're really searching and you're digging underneath your couch cushions to find some of these angles in which you could say one just isn't as strong as the other. You got 3 losses for Michigan against Michigan State. If you want to talk big stage games, you can't ignore that. A loss at Wisconsin back on January 19 looks a lot worse now than it probably did back in January.
Oh, yeah, it does.
So you can't ignore that as well. But, I think that one of the narratives in a tournament is which team has had that bad loss more recently? Where's the bad taste in their mouth? And in the conference tournament for Texas Tech, losing the way they did to West Virginia, you have to imagine that that's something Chris Beard has hammered into his team. And I think they're on a mission in this tournament. If I had a gun to my head, I'd back Texas Tech. But this is also one of those games where, grab a big old bucket of popcorn, sit back and enjoy. I think there's going to be an awesome storyline coming out of this game. I can't wait to see how it turns out.
Absolutely, man. I can't agree with you more there, So, and for you listeners out there, if you have to bet this game, at least you got our leans. We both leaned Texas Tech there. So, that we put a lot into handicapping these games. And if we don't come up with a play, hopefully we come up with a lean, and hopefully that's going to be a little bit of an edge for you. Let's move into Oregon versus Virginia. Virginia laying 8.5 points, over under even lower, 119 points. I'll get started here. Well, this is the lowest total I've seen in a while. Well, I think the Kansas State UC Irvine total was a little bit lower, but 119 is very low for the tournament. This game's probably got the most variance, I think, what could happen here. The sharp money's on Oregon, okay? The sharp money is saying that that's the totals. 60% of the money was on Oregon, and 72% of the tickets are on Oregon. 119 is the total. 70% of the money is on the over, or the tickets is on the over, but only 44% of the money is on the over. So it looks like the under is a little bit of a sharp angle. Moving back, Oregon was a fade team of mine. They only showed 42% away from home, and they only outscored opponents by 1.6 points in a weak Pac-12 schedule. But that's kind of, goes back to my point where you also got to be careful with the teams that are hot, because Oregon's definitely the hottest team in the tournament right now. As far as expectations, I think they're 10-0 against the spread the last 10 games. And they proved a lot of people wrong. I thought Bucky was going to get by them, and once they didn't, I put my money on Oregon. The Ducks are that talent that they have has finally come together. They lost Bowl a long time ago in this season, and it bugged them for a while, but they kind of readjusted their offense and was able to kind of change everything. I got to tell you, man, Dana Altman did a great job with this team. I'd be scared to bet them, man. Raw numbers of mine have Virginia winning by about 9.5 points. I mean, Virginia, they're another play on team. They shoot 47.7% away from home, outscore their opponents by, 10, 12 points on the road. But Oregon, looking what their huge front court did to Wisconsin, which is supposedly the number 3 defense in the league, according to KenPom, tells me that they can put up some points here. I think the spread's too large. All right, I think it warrants a small play. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised with how poised Virginia is that this could be a trap and they could blow them out. Okay, I wouldn't be surprised. But just looking at how hot Oregon is, I think there's value. All right, I think there's value at Oregon plus 8.5. I'm taking a small play on that. What are your thoughts?
Oh, man, Kiev, I don't know. Man, I took some notes on this one, and I feel very strongly that this is a buy low, or well, you can't say buy low, but it's certainly a sell high on Oregon. Who in their right mind can say that Oregon has not outperformed their expectations? 10-0 is certainly respectable. Can't ignore that. I might be on the edge here.
They're 10-0 against the Pac-12 and Wisconsin near the end of their year, underperforming, and UC Irvine. I can't back Oregon here, and I look at some of the lines that Virginia has had throughout the year. Favored by 9.5 against Florida State. Favored by 9 against Florida State. Favored by 9 and 12 against NC State. 10.5 against Oklahoma. Louisville favored by 5 on the road at Louisville earlier in the year. By 12 at home. Virginia Tech ranked 11th in the country. They've been favored by a decent margin. Clemson ranked 35th in the country. Favored on the road against Maryland by 3 at a time in which Maryland was a top 10, top 15 team in the country, now 24th. Favored on a neutral against Wisconsin at a time in which Wisconsin was ranked 15th in the country. So I think at 8.5 here, I would still back Virginia. I think you're in a position where even though Dana Altman and everything they say about him is his attorney coach, I don't know that I could take a side against Virginia right now. And at 8.5, I'd still be willing to lay some lumber on that one.
All right. Well, I like it. We have some disagreement there, and I'll tell you right now, if I'm looking at the full season, I'm on Virginia. But looking at how Oregon has just blown out their competition, looking how strong Washington looked when they played Utah State. Yeah, they got beat by North Carolina by a lot, but that's North Carolina. And then you look at Virginia and how they played another tall team like Florida State in their conference tournament and how that bugged them. I'm afraid that could come to fruition for them. So looking at the whole season, I agree with you. Looking at the last quarter of the season, I think the value's on Oregon. It's nice to just disagree, though. Probably means it shouldn't be a big play for any of you listeners out there.
Yeah. One quick thing. If you like Virginia, don't get too excited about the first half. I think they've demonstrated in the past that they can make their backers sit at the edge of their seat at halftime wondering how the heck are they going to come back in the second half.
Absolutely. Moving right on to Friday's games, we have LSU versus Michigan State. Michigan State laying about 6.5 points. Over under is at 148. It looks like the sharp money is on LSU. 46% of the tickets are on LSU, but 69% of the money is on LSU. It was a pretty big spread, 6.5. It looks like it might be down to 6 at some books. As far as the total, 22% of the bets are on the over, and 29% of the money is on the over. So the total went from 152 to 148. So you know that there's a first initial move that brought that total down, my man. Why don't you get started on this one?
I don't know that I could definitely recommend backing either side on this. Both resumes are extremely strong. This is a Washington, D.C. location. I don't know that it favors either side. I bet both fan bases travel very well. If anything, when you got a 6-point spread, you have to look dog or pass in one of these situations. LSU is one of those teams where you would think, in contrast to what I've said about Oregon, you were waiting for that ball to drop. Their drama scandal with their coach, waiting for that to play a factor, and they just keep shining. They just keep fighting. They've had so many overtime games that they've played in so far. I know that that's been something that people have talked about in recent past, but if anything